You won't believe this HOA nightmare. One man's quiet home was invaded by rules, fines, and an HOA Karen president. All because he put up this one garden gnome. But when he turned to the HOA for help, they did the one thing he never expected. The Homeowners Association had a strict no decorations policy, but the Karen president made an exception for herself. She put up Christmas lights, a nativity scene, and even a sign that said, "Beware of dog." But when our hero put up his own lawn decor, he got a warning letter from the HOA. He decided to fight back by appealing to the one person who could end the HOA's tyranny, the HOA Karen president. He offered to buy her a drink at Starbucks to discuss his grievances, but when she arrived, he had a whole other plan in mind. He took her on a tour of his property, pointing out all the ways she had violated the HOA rules, like the Christmas lights, the nativity scene, and the sign. Then he dropped the mic and walked away. The Karen had no choice but to back down. And the best part, he didn't even have to take down his gnome. The HOA couldn't do anything about it, because he had broken their rules. And that's why. It started small. The homeowner had just moved into his suburban dream house. The lawn was neat, the bushes trimmed, the flowers bloomed perfectly. And to add a touch of charm, he placed one garden gnome near the front path. A cheerful, red-hatted gnome, holding a lantern. Nothing flashy, nothing extreme. Just a simple decoration. But this neighborhood wasn't like others. It was ruled by the HOA, and at the center of it all was Karen, the HOA president. She had a reputation for controlling everything, from the color of the mailboxes to the height of the fences. And as soon as she spotted that gnome, she pounced. A letter arrived in the mailbox. Violation. Remove unapproved decoration. It was ridiculous. One gnome was apparently against neighborhood aesthetics. This Karen story is one of my favorites. At first, the homeowner just laughed it off. He thought it was hilarious that someone would be so upset over one little gnome. But then, Karen showed up at the house in person. She demanded to see the gnome and told him that he had to get rid of it. She left warning notes. She threatened fines. She even went as far as to say that the gnome could lower property values. The homeowner just stared at her. He looked around the street. All of his neighbors had wind chimes or bird baths, or even fake flamingos in their yards. And yet somehow, his one gnome was the most offensive thing in the neighborhood. That's when he realized this wasn't about the gnome at all. It was about Karen's need to control everything. This homeowner was so angry about his neighbor's complaint that he turned her entire yard into a gnome village. The story goes that Karen from next door hated gnomes. She complained to the HOA about the gnome on their lawn. And instead of just taking it down, the homeowner came up with a plan. If Karen hated one gnome, what would she do if there were 2 or 3 or 10? So, the very next weekend, a delivery truck pulled up and out came boxers filled with dozens of gnomes. Tall ones, short ones, gnomes holding fishing rods, gnomes pushing wheelbarrows, gnomes reading books. By the end of the day, his yard looked like a magical army had moved in. Passers-by stopped to take pictures. Children laughed and pointed. Neighbors whispered in amusement. And Karen? She was livid. Another letter arrived, this one much angrier. The HOA demanded immediate removal or face daily fines. But instead of removing them, the homeowner doubled down. This homeowners association is going viral for their ridiculous rules. Every week, more gnomes appeared in this front yard. Soon, there were over 50 of them. They guarded the walkway, peered out from behind the bushes, and stood proudly along the fence. Some even had solar-powered lights, glowing at night like a secret army on patrol. Karen escalated to... She marched door to door, trying to rally the neighbors to her side, but many of them actually enjoyed the gnome display. The street had become famous with families driving by just to see it. The HOA issued fines, but the homeowner found loopholes in the bylaws. Nowhere in the rules did it specifically say no gnomes. They tried to argue aesthetic harmony, but that was too vague to hold up legally. This goes to show, sometimes The most ridiculous rules are the ones that don't get enforced. If the HOA is going to waste everyone's time and money on something, it better be worth it. The HOA finally backed down. Their vague rules couldn't hold up in court, and the homeowner had too much public support. The fines were dropped, and Karen's influence began to crumble. She eventually stepped down as president after neighbors grew tired of her constant complaining. The Gnome Army, though, it still stood proudly on the lawn. By then, the display had grown to over 100 gnomes, each with its own quirky charm. The homeowner even began hosting annual gnome festivals where families from around the city came to take photos and enjoy the whimsical display. What started as one petty complaint about a garden gnome turned into one of the funniest HOA revenge battles ever recorded. All because Karen couldn't take no for an answer. But sometimes the best revenge is a little bit of creativity, a whole lot of persistence, and a dash of good humor. And this homeowner had all three!